The photograph arrived at the Colorado Historical Society in 1994, donated anonymously in a water-stained envelope postmarked from Leadville. No letter accompanied it, no explanation, just the image itself, printed on albumin paper that had somehow survived 125 years of storage in unknown conditions. The archivists who first examined it noted the exceptional quality of the exposure, the haunting composition, and the symbol scratched into the earth at the subject's feet. What they didn't know, what nobody knew, until a graduate student began cross-referencing territorial records 3 years later, was that this photograph represented the only physical evidence of a community that had simply ceased to exist. They called themselves the Disciples of the Ascending Breath. In the spring of 1869, a group of 47 men, women, and children established a colony in the San Juan Mountains of southwestern Colorado, approximately 11 miles from what would later become the town of Silverton. Led by a former Methodist minister named Josiah Cornelius Weatherby, the group had traveled from various points east, converging in Denver, before making the arduous journey into the High Country Land Office. Records show that Weatherby filed a claim for 320 acres in a narrow valley at an elevation of nearly 10,000 feet, a location that experienced snow 8 months of the year and offered virtually no commercial advantage. Contemporary accounts from miners passing through the region describe a settlement of rough-hewn cabins arranged in a perfect circle around a central clearing. The disciples wore undyed homespun clothing, regardless of the season, and were said to move about their work in complete silence during daylight hours. They traded for supplies infrequently and showed little interest in the silver strikes that were drawing thousands to the surrounding mountains. "Queer folk," wrote prospector Thomas Hendricks in a letter to his sister dated July 1869. "They watch the sky more than they watch each other. The Reverend says they're waiting for something. Didn't say what." Weatherby's theology, pieced together from fragments of correspondence and a single sermon transcribed by a visiting territorial judge, centered on the belief that the human soul was a literal substance, a vapor that could be cultivated, refined, and ultimately released at the moment of perfect spiritual readiness. He taught that conventional death was a corruption of this process, that dying in the lowlands, any elevation below 10,000 feet, trapped the soul in the body, condemning it to dissolution. The ascending breath, as Weatherby described it, could only be released at high altitude, where the thinness of the atmosphere offered less resistance to the soul's upward journey. But preparation was essential. The soul had to be purified through practices Weatherby had supposedly received in a series of visions during a near-fatal bout of pneumonia in 1867. The practices were unusual, to say the least. Members of the colony observed strict protocols that governed nearly every aspect of daily life. They slept sitting upright in chairs, never lying down, as Weatherby claimed that horizontal rest compressed the soul and impeded its development. Meals were consumed in complete darkness inside a windowless structure known as the blind house, where members sat in silence for exactly 1 hour while eating. The logic was that sensory deprivation during nourishment prevented the soul from becoming entangled with base pleasures. But the most disturbing practice involved breathing itself. Multiple sources confirm that the disciples practiced what they called the exchange. At dawn and again at dusk, the entire colony would gather in the central clearing and form concentric circles based on age and time spent in the community. They would then engage in a synchronized breathing pattern that apparently took weeks to master. A complex rhythm of inhalation and exhalation that one witness described as sounding like wind moving through a cave or many people drowning slowly. During the exchange, members would lean forward until their faces nearly touched the ground, directing their exhalations toward the earth while drawing in the breath of the person opposite them in the circle. Weatherby taught that this practice allowed souls to learn from one another, creating a collective spiritual advancement that would ensure everyone ascended together when the prophesied moment arrived. Judge Harlan Webster, who visited the colony in August 1869 to verify the land claim, wrote in his official report, "I observed this breathing ceremony and found it profoundly unsettling. The precision of their movements suggested extensive drilling, and the sound produced by their collective respiration created a kind of resonance I have never encountered. The children participated with the same intensity as the adults. When I inquired about the symbol they trace in the dirt before each ceremony, a spiral intersecting with 3 vertical lines, Reverend Weatherby smiled and said only, 'It is the map.' The symbol that appears in the photograph has been analyzed by folklorists, religious scholars, and semioticians for decades. It bears no resemblance to any known religious iconography of the period, though some have noted similarities to certain alchemical diagrams and to markings found at isolated archaeological sites throughout the Southwest. Weatherby referred to it variously as the breath made visible, the ascending pattern, and the gateway notation. According to fragments of testimony from former members, the symbol was to be drawn before every exchange ceremony, scraped into bare earth, using only the index finger of the left hand. The spiral represented the soul's journey from the body, while the 3 lines marked the barriers that had to be transcended: flesh, will, and memory. Most intriguingly, the symbol was apparently never to be drawn on paper, carved into wood, or otherwise permanently recorded. The earth would be smoothed over after each ceremony. Erasing the pattern that it appears in this photograph suggests the image was taken during or immediately after a ritual, possibly without the subject's knowledge or consent. The photograph's provenance is murky, but handwriting analysis of notations on the back of the original print, now badly faded but preserved in historical records, suggests it may have been taken by Elias Drummond, an itinerant photographer known to have traveled through the San Juan region in 1869. Drummond's journals, held by the Denver Public Library, contain an entry dated September 14th, 1869. Made camp below the Weatherby settlement. They do not welcome visitors, but I observed them from a distance with my glass. Their evening ritual is like nothing I have witnessed in my travels. I am resolved to obtain a photograph, though I sense they would forbid it. There is something in their faces, a quality of waiting, of listening for something the rest of us cannot hear. I admit to a superstitious dread. A later entry, dated September 18th, reads simply, "I have the photograph. I wish I did not. Leaving at first light." Drummond died of tuberculosis in Kansas City in 1871. The photograph's whereabouts between that date and 1994 remain unknown. In late October 1869, the first heavy snows came early to the San Juan Mountains. By mid-November, the colony was completely isolated, as were most high-altitude settlements in the region. This was not unusual. What was unusual was what happened the following spring. When the snow melted in May 1870, a party of miners traveling to new claims in the area noticed that no smoke rose from the colony. Upon investigation, they found the settlement completely deserted. The cabin stood empty, doors left open. Food stores remained untouched. Personal effects, clothing, tools, even Bibles, lay scattered about as if the inhabitants had simply walked away from their lives mid-task. There were no bodies, no signs of violence, no indication of where 47 people might have gone. The mountain terrain showed no tracks leading away from the settlement, though admittedly the snowmelt had created muddy conditions that made tracking difficult. Most puzzling was the condition of the central clearing. The earth had been excavated to a depth of approximately 3 feet in a circular pattern, roughly 40 feet in diameter. The removed soil was piled in neat mounds around the perimeter, but there was no indication of what, if anything, had been buried there or removed. It appeared they had been digging to China, wrote one of the miners who found the site, or perhaps digging themselves out of the world. A territorial marshal arrived 2 weeks later to investigate. His report concluded that the colonists had most likely abandoned the settlement during the winter, possibly after running short of supplies or after disagreements within the group. The theory proposed that they had attempted to reach Silverton or another nearby mining camp, but had perished in the mountains. The lack of bodies was attributed to wild animals. This explanation satisfied the authorities, but it satisfied no one else. The entire food supply remained. Weatherby's extensive library of religious texts sat undisturbed on shelves in his cabin, and most tellingly, a locked strongbox containing $347 in gold coin, a substantial sum, was found beneath a floorboard in the blind house. People fleeing starvation don't leave food. People abandoning a failed settlement don't leave their money. For decades, the disappearance was relegated to the status of minor historical curiosity, occasionally mentioned in books about Colorado's territorial period, but generally dismissed as one of many unsolved mysteries from an era when records were poor and people routinely went missing in the wilderness. Then, in 1923, a woman named Sarah Hartwell gave a deathbed confession to a Presbyterian minister in Durango. She claimed to have been 9 years old when her family joined the disciples of the Ascending Breath. She remembered the breathing ceremonies, the symbol, and the weeks leading up to what she called the final exchange. According to Hartwell's account, Weatherby had declared in September 1869 that his calculations were complete. The moment of perfect atmospheric conditions was approaching, a confluence of elevation, season, and celestial alignment that would create an opening through which properly prepared souls could ascend. The entire colony began fasting, eating only enough to maintain consciousness. The exchange ceremonies increased to 4 times daily, then 6, then 8. We were always breathing, Hartwell recalled. In the pattern, always in the pattern. My mother's face became thin as paper. We drew the symbol so many times, the clearing became a bowl. Father Weatherby said we were preparing the earth to remember us, so that when we left, we would leave a mark of our ascending. Hartwell claimed that on the night of the final exchange, which she placed in late October, around the time of the first snow, something changed in the ceremony. The usual pattern was disrupted. People began breathing irregularly, gasping. Some collapsed. In the chaos and darkness, Hartwell's mother grabbed her and ran. They stumbled through the forest, found the trail, and somehow made it to Silverton, where her mother told everyone they'd been visiting family in the colony when everyone fell ill. They left Colorado within a month. My mother made me promise never to speak of it, Hartwell said. But I see them in my dreams still, all of them standing in that clearing, breathing the pattern, drawing that symbol deeper and deeper into the earth, as if they were trying to fall into the ground instead of rise from it. And the last thing I remember, before Mother pulled me away, was the sound. The sound all their breath made together when they changed the pattern. It sounded like the earth was breathing back. The minister who recorded her confession dismissed it as the confused memories of childhood trauma filtered through 6 decades of guilt and embellishment. The confession was filed away and forgotten. In 2003, during renovation of a house in Silverton, built in 1885, workers discovered a tin box hidden in a wall cavity. Inside was another photograph, or rather, a portion of one. The image showed the same circular clearing, the same symbol scratched into the earth, but taken from a different angle. In this photograph, the symbol appeared deeper, carved into the ground, rather than merely scratched into the surface. And at the edge of the frame, barely visible, was what appeared to be a hand emerging from the excavated earth. Fingers spread wide, palm upward. The photograph was badly damaged by moisture and only partially visible, but chemical analysis dated it to approximately 1869 to 1870. The most unsettling detail was noted by the conservator who first examined it. The hand's position and the disturbed earth around it suggested that whatever body it belonged to was positioned vertically in the ground, not horizontally, buried standing up or possibly in the act of emerging. The photograph is kept in a climate-controlled vault at the Colorado Historical Society. Researchers must request permission to view it, and according to archive staff, very few do. Those who have examined it report a similar reaction, a profound sense of unease that has less to do with what the photograph shows than with what it suggests might have happened just outside the frame. The settlement site can still be found, though it requires a difficult hike and careful navigation. The cabins are long gone, reduced to rotting logs and rusted nails. But the clearing remains, a circular depression in the forest floor where nothing grows properly. The trees that have encroached on it are stunted and twisted, their trunks spiraling in ways that forestry experts cannot explain. Visitors to the site occasionally report unusual experiences, sensations of breathlessness despite the altitude, feelings of being watched, and a peculiar auditory phenomenon described as a wind that comes from the ground. Most leave quickly. Some leave the symbol drawn in the dust of their own passing, whether as tribute or unconscious compulsion, no one can say. The original photograph, the one that arrived anonymously in 1994, hangs in the research library of the Colorado Historical Society, available for viewing by appointment. It's often used in books about Colorado's frontier period, usually with a caption explaining that it shows an unidentified religious community circa 1869. But look closely at the faces of the 6 people in the photograph. 5 men, 1 young woman, all with the same intense, patient expression. They're not looking at the camera. They're looking at something behind the photographer, or perhaps beyond him. And if you study the symbol at their feet, the spiral and the 3 lines scratched deep into the mountain earth, you might notice something that's easily missed on casual viewing. It's not a spiral descending into the ground. It's a spiral ascending from beneath it. The disciples of the ascending breath believed that souls rose to heaven. But perhaps Weatherby's visions had shown him something else entirely. Not how to leave the earth, but how to go deeper into it, to a place where breath and soil become the same substance, where the faithful might wait in the mountain's dark heart, still practicing the exchange, still drawing the symbol, still breathing in that ancient pattern, still preparing to ascend. Or perhaps they already have, in a direction none of us thought to look. The photograph shows the moment just before. What came after exists only in the silence of that clearing, in the spiral of those stunted trees, in the testimony of a frightened child who became an old woman haunted by the memory of breath that sounded like the earth itself had learned to inhale. 47 people walked into the mountains in 1869. Only the photograph walked back out.